All right, welcome back to the Crucial Convo podcast. You're tapped in with your host, Kojo Afriye. Thanks for tapping in. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, hit that and turn on your notifications, of course. Let's get right into it. You guys ready for war in America? Are we ready for World War III? Because right now it's getting crazy. Now, we all know that Israel and Iran have been poised for war for a while now, and it's finally happening. Unfortunately, America looks like we're going to be getting in it because Trump is talking extremely tough, and it looks like I would say he's almost painted himself into a corner. Now, earlier on, he said that we may strike Iran, and what does that mean? Right now, he talked about possibly trying to take out the supreme leader there, and I don't know if American people are really ready for it. I'll be honest with you. Now, I've rolled with Donald Trump on a lot of things he's done domestically since he's been in office. He's only been in 6 months. Now, what I want to say is that when you think about war is such a big thing for a president. It's not something really light for a president. And even if we're successful in that war, there's always an aftermath. So that's the thing I think people have to think about. So I'll say off top, I really don't think the U.S. should be directly involved in the war with Iran because it's not just going to end there. Now, let's get into some stuff that he said. Let's get into his actual words and what the temperature is right now. Let me play this.
President Trump has called for Iran's unconditional surrender. And today we had a response to that in a televised address by Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. His tone was bellicose, as you might expect from the Iranian leader with his country under bombardment. He said that Iranians do not respond well to the language of threats. He was defiant. He vowed that Iran would never surrender to coercion. And perhaps most pertinently for Americans, he said that any U.S. military intervention will, quote, undoubtedly result in irreparable damage to them. Now, Iran has already accused the U.S. of being complicit in Israel's attack and has threatened to retaliate against American military bases. There are many U.S. bases here in the Middle East, along with around 40,000 American troops. But perhaps the most obvious target for an Iranian retaliation would be the roughly 2,500 U.S. troops here in Iraq, simply because they are right next door to Iran.
Let's stop right there for a minute. Let's think about that for a minute. Now, if you're old enough to go back to 2003, we got into war with Iraq. Now, obviously, we were in the aftermath of 9/11. Americans were in a place where we were like, listen, smoke anything moving. We just were at a point where we were hurt. We were paranoid. We thought everybody in the Middle East was involved with Osama bin Laden some way or somehow. We were sold on that, right? Now, I'm not saying all Americans were, but by and large, most people were sold on it. The aftermath of the Iraq war we see cost a lot of money, a lot of lives, and there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq before we had the war there. Once we had the war and removed Saddam Hussein, that's when we created essentially ISIS in Iraq, right? So my point being is that, listen, regime change is not an easy thing. And right now, if they kill that supreme leader, you're going to be opening things up for regime change. And how would that work? We don't know. But what I would say is that I'm hoping that Trump and Iran obviously find some way to negotiate. I don't see that happening now because of the way Trump has talked. And the other part of it, well, I don't think we're looking at yet, is where does China fit into all this? China is obviously an advocate or an ally of Iran. Russia is also an advocate or ally of Iran. And it's funny because Trump talked about earlier how President Putin hit him up and said, hey, you want me to help? I want to help broker this peace agreement with Iran. And he's like, dude, handle your own stuff with Ukraine. You got other things to handle. We don't need help over here with that. So I thought that was funny. But where does China stand? China's been very quiet. China's been extremely quiet. But I don't think China's going to just sit back and not do anything if we get directly involved. That's what I'm thinking. So I'm more worried about China, but I think China honestly looks like the mature, bigger brother right now, because they are not for war. They don't want it. And from what I've seen, they've talked about, the fact that they don't necessarily agree with Israel either, of course, but I think at the same time, they don't want to see war. They want to see the Middle East calm, because at the end of the day, war is going to hurt everybody globally. So does Iran want to form a nuclear weapon to destroy its enemies in the Middle East, namely Israel? I don't know. I really don't know. I think that when you go back to 2003, just, like I said, I'm just paralleling this to the Iraq war. Now, when we go back to 2003, Colin Powell sat in there and did the whole speech about, Saddam Hussein wanting to do some type of nuclear weapon and weapons of mass destruction. And we were all sold that because we thought that Iraq wants to do something dangerous to the world. Now, this is a whole nother time, obviously, because the U.S. right now, left and right, Republican, Democrat, I don't think either one wants war, because war is going to cost the U.S. money. And, right now they're selling it like, okay, the U.S. will just go in and drop these big bunker busting bombs and that'll be it. It'll be a heavy hit and it'll be over. But it doesn't end like that, right? Now, whether the U.S. will actually bring troops into Tehran, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna come to that. We'll probably just drop huge bombs and destroy a lot of that land. But you got to remember, Iran is one of the oldest. That's one of the oldest civilizations in the area. The Persian people. So destroying that is not going to necessarily be something that just happens and then it's over. That's the problem, and I think that's the thing we have to think about. Let's look at the bunker busting bombs they're talking about. This is a 30,000 pound bomb that's supposed to be on this B-2 Spirit bomber.
Well, as Israel and Iran continue to exchange strikes and the Trump administration weighs its options, there's one resource drawing some attention. It's called the B-2 Spirit bomber. It can carry a so-called bunker buster bomb capable of penetrating 200 feet inside a target. The B-2s are primarily located at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. And that's where we find CBS News correspondent Ian Lee. Ian, tell us a little bit more about this very impressive instrument, the B-2 bomber.
Hi, Elizabeth. Yeah, if that bomber were to take off, it would fly pretty much directly over me. We've been out here waiting, seeing if it's going to take off, but this is a very special plane. It is a stealth bomber, and as you pointed out, it can carry a bunker buster bomb. This is the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator. This is a 30,000 pound guided bomb that this plane can deliver anywhere in the world from this plane taking off from right behind me. And this is significant because it would be then targeting, if it were to go to Iran, the Fordo nuclear power plant. This is a power plant that's buried underneath a mountain. And so this is really one of the only bombs that could even try to get down that far. The bomb can penetrate about 200 feet deep.
The nuclear sites for Iran are hundreds of feet deep, underground, under concrete. Now, this 30,000 pound bomb, it actually penetrates 100 or so feet into the ground, and then from what I understand, they have to drop another one, so it penetrates deeply. Then they have to drop a second bomb to keep penetrating to get down there. And the reason why the U.S. is going to be involved, we are really the only. Without us, Israel can drop bombs, but in order to destroy the nuclear sites of Iran, they're going to need the U.S. And this is where I think that I'm hoping they go ahead and negotiate, because with the U.S. getting involved, I think it's gonna cause other powers to get involved, namely China. I don't think Russia's gonna do anything. They don't really have money and or time to really get involved like that, but China does. But I don't think that they want to, but they may. So what does regime change look like, right? So let's go back to 2003 again, when we invaded Iraq and we got rid of Saddam Hussein. The Iraqi people were all excited about regime change, and, they're excited about what the future of Iraq could be. What did we see? We saw more fighting in Iraq. We saw more death. We saw chaos. We saw a destabilized, weak government, right? And we saw more terrorism, right? And then from there, that terrorism essentially spreaded across the Middle East. And of course, we saw large amounts of, the U.S. military die. So the question is, can you have regime change and it be smooth? And I think that regime change only works when it comes from within, right? If there was a coup within that country and there was a strong military coup, then you could have regime change and it could happen. But America trying to do regime change, I haven't seen that work. You know what I'm saying? Israel's point of view and why they want Iran gone, because they feel that Iran is, a proxy for a lot of terrorists, and they feel like Iran wants to wipe them off the map. I don't think Iran wants to wipe Israel off the map. In my opinion, that if Iran tried to destroy Israel from the standpoint of a nuclear weapon, it would also destroy most of the people that are around Israel, like the Syrians, like the Gazans. So I don't think it's likely that Iran wants to use a nuclear weapon on Israel. I don't really think that makes sense to me personally. I think it would just be too much collateral damage, and I don't really see that as something that they want to do. But this is something that Israel claims. Now, Israel's point of view for Iran, they want a whole different regime, right? The problem is that America, we're not really affected by what Iran does. I mean, Iran, even if they are proxies for terrorism, we over here are not necessarily affected as far as American people. Now, the issue is, will American people be behind Trump on this thing? Because America does not have the money for war right now. And Trump, when he ran, he marketed himself as this president who is not a war president, right? Although neoconservative Republicans are typically warmongers, and that's usually the direction they've gone historically. But Trump marketed himself as something different. He marketed himself as a deal maker. He marketed himself as somebody who is going to work through problems and not go to war first, and didn't want any more U.S. wars. That's why he wanted to end Ukraine and Russia and not have us be involved even in helping Ukraine anymore. That was his biggest thing, is that we don't need to be involved in that. And now it looks like we're going to be involved in Iran. Now, as we showed earlier, the aftermath of that is that you're going to have many U.S. bases that are going to be facing attack, and everybody around the world who's American will be facing some type of repercussion going at Iran like this. So, let me play a little bit about the protests. I think some people are going to protest this, and I'll be honest with you, I think the American people, it's going to be a hard sell for American people to get involved in Iran deeply.
Trump is facing opposition from some fellow Republicans as well as Democrats about getting the U.S. involved. Protests against the war in Iran are planned in dozens of cities in the U.S. this evening, including New York City. Eyewitness News reporter Stefan Camp is live in Bryant Park, where you can see protests have already started. Stefan.
Well, Liz, just to give you a sense of the tension, even just here on Fifth Avenue, moments before this protest even got underway, the NYPD had to separate two separate confrontations right here on the steps of the public library. And there is now a sea of NYPD blue circling this library just to make sure in case things go sideways. This is a national day of protest denouncing war on Iran, getting underway at Bryant Park. As you mentioned, there are anti-war demonstrators here, but also Iranian Americans worried for their family's safety. This, as President Trump is deciding whether or not to get involved.
So how do the Iranian people feel about regime change? So what I've seen is that there are a lot of Iranians who want the supreme leader gone and want to have more of a secular Iran. And then there are people who are against it. Now, the Iranian people here obviously don't want war, and they're worried about the safety of, their people in Tehran and, surrounding areas of Iran. But what will it mean for Americans, right? And what will it mean for Donald Trump's presidency? Now, war is a big deal for a president, right? So if you go back to the last major war we had, essentially, that was the Iraq War. And what did it mean for President Bush? I mean, we were in it way longer than what we had planned and way longer than what everybody thought, right? It's so different now because we're not in a 9/11 state. Americans don't want war. I don't think Americans want to be involved in war, and Americans don't want to pay for it. Trump is going to have to sell for his image. If we get involved deeply in logistically and deeply into the war between Iran and Israel, he's going to have to convince the Americans, why is this important? because we can talk about how dangerous Iran is and how, you know, they're an enemy of the Middle East, they're an enemy of a lot of our allies, but at the end of the day, Americans here are like, yo, we don't want more of that. We don't want another Iraq. We don't want another situation where as soon as you change a regime, you're responsible for everything that happens after that. That's the way it's looked at. If you kill the president, supreme leader, prince, king, whatever, whoever runs the country, you know, the people are like, yo, you got to help us rebuild. The aftermath is they don't have a leader. And then you also have a problem with a vacuum that typically happens when you kill a leader of a country. You have a vacuum. So you typically have factions who have different points of view. So you may have clans, tribes, different people, different political parties, and sometimes it ends up in a lot of violence before you can stabilize things. So this is a big problem with regime change, and we saw that in Iraq. Like I said, we saw that in Libya, right? We saw that in Libya, getting rid of Gaddafi. That was a big deal, and people in the country said they liked it, but at the same time, people hated it because the country went into a lot of chaos. So let's play the exiled prince, Reza Pahlavi. He was the exiled crown prince. His father was the last Shah of Iran. Let's play some of what he had to say.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tells ABC News targeting the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, would end the fight between the two countries, not escalate it. Netanyahu's comments come as Iran's exiled crown prince says it's time for the Iranian military and security forces to abandon the Islamic Republic. Reza Pahlavi's grandfather was the last Shah of Iran before the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The exiled crown prince of Iran and advocate for secular democratic Iran, Reza Pahlavi, joins me now for more. Sir, thank you for coming on. You say now is the time for the Iranian people to come together and reclaim Iran by getting rid of the Ayatollah. Why do you think that? And could the Iranian people do this without an international effort?
Well, first of all, this is not a new fight for us. It's been going on for decades, and particularly in the latter years, we've seen how many times the Iranians have gathered together in protest and defiance of the regime, knowing full well that as long as this regime is in place, there's no hope for a better future for all of us as Iranians. Now the opportunity has been provided in the sense that when you're fighting an extremely brutal and repressive regime, when it's been now declawed and we are sensing almost a state of collapse by the regime, by people beginning to defect, by relatives of the regime taking flight, by the leader himself hiding in an underground tunnel, I think that this is an opportunity that we have never had this far in the past 4 decades. And this is the best opportunity for us to finally overcome this regime and get rid of it. So I think my fellow compatriots are energized in the fact that finally they can see light at the end of the tunnel, and all the martyrs and all the people we have lost in our struggle against this regime will not have died in vain. This is our moment in history to change not only the course of things in our own country, but something that I believe would also be to the best interest of the free world.
Iran is a little different. They have a supreme leader. So they do have a president, but the president is second in command. The ultimate authority goes to the supreme leader. So that's how it works there. And right now, this is the guy that Trump talks about possibly killing. And I really think that it's going to be a bad idea to assassinate that supreme leader, only because I think the aftermath will be very dangerous for the U.S. You know, terrorism, it's a difficult thing. So I'm not here to argue whether Iran sponsors terrorism or not. Terrorism is a conversation, is a very deep conversation in what you define as terrorism, right? So I'm not going to sit here and argue that. But I do know when you're dealing with countries in the Middle East, right, the aftermath of war and assassinating leaders and regime change often causes new terrorism. That's one of my concerns with the United States, is that we really don't need that right now. I think Trump marketed himself as being someone who had a lot of diplomacy, knew how to get people to do what they needed to do without bombs, without threat. And the way he's poised himself against the supreme leader, I think has gotten to a point now. I don't think America can really, because he's basically saying that unless the supreme leader comes and says, listen, I'm going to totally surrender and do whatever you want, we're going to bomb you. They're not going to do that. I don't see the Iranian leadership doing that. You know, it's just, it makes, even if they know they're going to get slaughtered, I think that they're the same way, they're poised the same way Saddam Hussein was. Saddam Hussein, I mean, he believed that, you know what, who cares if you guys come over here, US, we're not surrendering. And they got, obviously Iraq got destroyed. But it's also a pride thing when you're dealing with these leaders, because they're going to be prideful and say, to the last drop of blood, we're going to fight. But at the same time, the people who live there don't want that. The average everyday Iranian does not want war, and they don't want to be fleeing the capital and, going through regime change and all this stuff if it's going to cost a lot of death. Will it make Israel safer? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, the world is so complicated, right? Because it's almost like gang violence when if we can compare it to like street violence. Gangs, it's like an ongoing killing, right? So it's like one gang, you kill another, they're gonna come back and kill you. You're gonna go kill them, they come kill you. So it's not always about who has the most power. It seems like that, but it doesn't really end the conflict. That's the problem, and that's what when you go back again to the Iraq war, it's like, what would have happened if Saddam Hussein was still around? I wasn't a fan of Saddam Hussein. I don't think he treated his people well, and I think it was well documented how bad of a leader he was. But what was the aftermath for the United States? The money and lives that it cost to remove Saddam Hussein. What would have happened if he still was in power? Because I don't think he was a fan of personally get involved in terrorism. I don't think he had weapons of mass destruction. I think he liked running things over in Iraq, and I think he wanted more control over oil, that's for sure, right? And I think he wanted more and more control over his people, that's for sure, right? But was he an existential threat to the United States? No, right? And I think it cost us more removing him than it would have cost to just leave him there. So with Iran, there is time I think there's enough time to keep discussing with them. But I think, again, let's be honest, Israel and Iran have a different beef that's not our beef, right? And I think that, Israel wants the US to step up and get involved in this, mainly because that's their beef. And it is what it is. That's their beef. But is it for the United States? Is it something that we need as U.S. citizens? And will Trump's presidency survive if we get involved deeply like that? So we shall see. Let me get on back to R. Kelly. I had talked about this the last episode. So R. Kelly, they had talked about how his lawyer had spoke about this about 4 or 5 days ago about the government wanting to kill him, right? The government wanted to kill R. Kelly. And they said that there was a white supremacist that was supposedly transferred or was going to be transferred to his prison. And that white supremacist was going to kill R. Kelly, which sounded like a weird story a couple of days ago. But as we go into it now, R. Kelly, as of yesterday, was rushed to the hospital for an overdose regarding his medicine. So what they found, from what I understand, R. Kelly, he takes medicine for anxiety and some other things going on. I don't know if he has high blood pressure or whatever, but they found blood clots in his leg when he went to the hospital, because I guess he wasn't feeling well, and he found some blood clots in his leg. And then, from what I understand, the prison staff, I guess he takes, R. Kelly meaning, he takes these pills or some type of drugs daily, and it sounds like the prison staff gave him too much drugs or overdosed him somehow. So let me play this real quick. This is his R. Kelly's lawyer talking about this. This is a strange story because they are petitioning to get him out. And 1 minute he's saying the feds want to kill his client, meaning R. Kelly. And then the next couple of days after that, R. Kelly's rushed to the hospital for an overdose. So let's play this.
Within days, something odd happened. What was it actually that happened on Friday to your client, R. Kelly?
Well, it was Thursday evening when he was administered his anxiety and sleeping medication in solitary confinement. So he got the medication on Thursday, as usual. He has to have it administered because this is prison and he's in solitary. So he wakes up early Friday morning. He's feeling faint. He sees black spots. He tries to stand. He collapses He crawls to the door of his cell and loses consciousness. When they get him on the gurney, the prison officials indicate they want to take him to the medical center there at the facility on site, but that facility was not able to treat him, and they took him off-site to Duke University Hospital, where he was diagnosed with an overdose, having received basically 2 times the necessary dosage and the appropriate dosage of his medication. And then while there, Mr. Kelly outlined his concerns about blood clots in his legs. A scan was done by the hospital, and they found blood clots in both legs and in his lungs, and wanted to do a procedure to address that and keep him in the hospital for 7 days. He was given a treatment plan. Within an hour, officers came in who had custody of Mr. Kelly. And as we are told, they came in with not just handguns at their sides, with actual AR-15 style rifles, removed him from the hospital without the procedure, without the surgical intervention that they said he needed. And they returned him to solitary confinement, where he sits today.
Why do they want to kill R. Kelly? So a couple of days ago when I talked about this, I wasn't really sure. From what we understand, the feds, when they put together this case for R. Kelly, I guess there was a lot of coercion that went on with witnesses, and there's something fishy that went on in regards to the witnesses. So they've uncovered this information now. This is Bo Bentley, his lawyer, which I kind of made fun of him some days back because he was representing Tiffany Henyard. But anyway, I guess they found the information. They found out some new evidence regarding the government doing something fishy with the witnesses. So they found some information on this, and I guess they're going to be exposing this. Ever since that point, Bo Bentley has been saying that the government, and R. Kelly as well, has been saying that they want to kill him because of this new information. So if it comes out that the government was doing something funny or doing something illegal to coerce witnesses to testify against him, this could be a big breakout bombshell for this R. Kelly case. So, but it is fishy. It is fishy, like I said. So like I said a few days ago, he said they wanted to kill him. He got rushed to the hospital. They gave him an overdose of what he normally takes for his blood clot and his anxiety and stuff like that. And it looks like the prison guards try to take him out. So this is a weird story. But R. Kelly, man, I don't know if he is going to ever get out, but I do think they may need to look into this now, because if he ends up dead, this is going to be a strange situation, and they probably want to at this point move him over to somewhere safe, and they need to look into this, because R. Kelly went to jail. Yeah, he ain't been in there that long. He was convicted back in 2020 and 21 and 22. So he's been in jail about 5 years now, going on 5 years. So he hasn't been in jail. Well, no, he was actually only been in jail 3 years. He was sentenced June 2022 for 30 years in jail. So in federal prison. So, listen, man, God bless R. Kelly. Like I said, he had a lot of chances to straighten his life out. But 30 years is basically life for him at this point, but hopefully he's able to get somewhere transferred and somewhere safe. So we'll see what's up. But let me I want to get on to my review. I want to talk about my review of the movie Straws. So everybody's been talking about Straws. Now, before I even get into Straws, Tyler Perry, I was looking at earlier, he's been hit with this lawsuit. This is crazy work. He got hit with a $260 million lawsuit by one of the actors that was on his show called The Oval. And this is a nasty, nasty man lawsuit, because it talks about how he essentially allegedly sexually assaulted and sexually harassed one of the guys who were working on his show. So I'm gonna play a little bit of this before I get into the review of Straws. So let me play this, because this is crazy. I'm telling you, and I'm not saying Tyler did it. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that when you have, I say this a million times, when you have resources, you have to be careful what you're doing. And I don't know what it is about people who have resources where their sexual desires, they feel like, yo, I can just buy everybody. I think that there was a time where you could buy everybody, but now everything's on camera, everything's on film, everybody's gonna sue. So if you have money, you need to get people who are willingly wanting to be down with you, get an NDA signed, and you do whatever nasty stuff you want to do. But if you think you're gonna be, and again, this is all alleged, but if you think you're gonna be coercing people and cornering people and pressuring people into doing things because you have money and you can put them in position, you're gonna be vulnerable for a lawsuit. And I don't know if this guy has any proof, but listen, text messages, all of that stuff, text messages, inboxes, emails, pictures, phone recordings, ring cameras, whatever, there's evidence everywhere. So if Tyler Perry did any of this, he is going to be in a lot of trouble. He's going to spend a lot of money.
Breaking news coming into Law and Crime. Actor, director, and film titan Tyler Perry is the latest celebrity to be accused of sexual assault. We got our hands on a new lawsuit filed Friday in Los Angeles Superior Court by an actor named Derek Dixon, who starred on one of Perry's hit shows. We want to break down this lawsuit and what it could mean for the movie mogul. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. So to start off, Dixon is suing Tyler Perry, the individual, as well as his production studio. That studio is called TPS Production Services, LLC. That stands for Tyler Perry Studios in Action, LLC. And he is looking for $260 million. Dixon, who portrayed a lead role in Perry's show called The Oval, is claiming 10 causes of action for the civil suit. Quid pro quo sexual harassment, work environment sexual harassment, workplace gender violence, violation of the Bain Act, a California law that protects against violation of someone's civil rights through force or coercion, sexual battery, sexual assault, negligent retention, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and retaliation. Let's get into this lawsuit. The complaint starts off by saying, quote, "This case arises from a sustained pattern of workplace sexual harassment, assault, and retaliation perpetrated by Tyler Perry, a powerful media mogul, against plaintiff Derek Dixon, a professional actor and screenwriter. Mr. Perry is an American actor, filmmaker, and playwright who has built one of the most successful careers in the film and television industry. Mr. Perry took his success and power and used his considerable influence in the entertainment industry to create a coercive, sexually exploited dynamic with Mr. Dixon, initially promising him career advancement and creative opportunities, such as producing his pilot and casting him in his show, only to subject him to escalating sexual harassment, assault, and battery, and professional retaliation when Mr. Dixon did not reciprocate Mr. Perry's unwanted advances. These events occurred while Mr. Dixon was employed as a series regular on the Tyler Perry show, The Oval, and while Mr. Perry held direct control over his employment, compensation, and creative opportunities. This lawsuit even compares Perry to some other infamous celebrities who have been called out for their behavior in the past.
Derek Dixon worked on The Oval, and what he's basically saying, as they go through the whole thing, I'm not going to play all the video, they basically say that Tyler Perry essentially had a crush on this guy and made certain advances at him and basically told him that, look, if you don't respond the way I want you to, I'm going to kill your character off on The Oval. And not that long after a lot of this stuff happened, the character on The Oval got killed. It killed the character off, and this guy's suing. But he talks about how Tyler Perry allegedly, invited him to his house and they were drinking together. He offered the guest room to this guy. This guy slept in the guest room, and Tyler Perry allegedly came into the room and tried to advance himself. Just a disgusting story. But point being, the only reason why I bring it up is because it's just another story of, if you have resources, if you want to get involved with people, you have resources. There are people who will get involved with you regardless, right? So I think if you have resources, again, I'm saying this because it's all allegedly. I don't know if he did it or didn't do it, but if you have money, there's no reason to end up in these lawsuits. The reality is that if you have money, you got to get an NDA and have people who are consensual in whatever you want to do. But more importantly, as they related to Puff, the problem is if once you start having power, you cannot use that power in any way to try to intimidate people. This is not back in the day. Now everybody is suing, and there's an easy way for people to go and take you to court and bang you out for a bunch of money. So either this guy, Derek Dixon, is lying and just wants to get a payday, or Tyler Perry may have gotten, you know, he's been rich for a long time. He's been rich for a long time. So it could have been a situation where he felt like, yo, I like this guy and I'm going to go ahead and do what I want to do. And put the pressure on this guy to do what I want him to do. So we're going to see. But anyway, I wanted to just play a little bit of that. Now I got to get into straws, right? I got to get into straws. I watched the movie over the weekend. I actually watched it on Father's Day. I saw the previews and I thought it was an interesting movie when I saw the preview. So I said, you know, let me go ahead and check out Straws, right? So Straws, obviously the main character, Taraji P. Henson, she did a great job in the movie. And obviously we had the head detective, Tiana Taylor. She was in the movie. She was one of the main detectives dealing with the character Taraji. Sherry Shepard was the bank manager. If you haven't seen the movie, I think you should check it out. So I went online, and one of the reasons why I wanted to watch it too is that people were criticizing it and saying that, yo, Tyler Perry, I heard a lot of people say the movie was good. I heard a lot of people say the movie was just another predictable Tyler Perry movie. So now, full disclosure, I've never been the biggest Tyler Perry fan as far as his material. I never have been. It just wasn't really my cup of tea, but I've seen some of his movies, right? Like Why Did I Get Married? The first one was good. And I've seen some of the sitcoms he's done here and there, but you know, typically his movies are a little bit more, they're more like, how do I describe it? I mean, it's more like theater. He's from theater. So to me, it was kind of theater-ish to me. So it wasn't really my type of thing. I like dramas. I like things that are believable. But anyway, Straws. So let me talk about the things I liked about Straws. The thing I liked about Straw is the name of the movie. The thing I liked about Straw, I thought Taraji, she played it. So she's a single mom who has a daughter. And I think the daughter has like epilepsy or something that she needs medicine for. And she's a really involved mom, right? And she cares about her daughter, right? She takes her daughter to school. She does all the things she needs to do for her daughter. She's a struggling single mom, doesn't have a lot of money, and is just going through a really hard time. That's kind of the gist of the movie. You know, we could call the movie Bad Day because Taraji was having a hell of a bad day in that movie, right? So here's the thing about the story, though. I thought the story was realistic to a point. Now, in a movie, you're never going to have exact way life actually goes. So they're going to exaggerate certain things. Now, Tyler Perry in this movie exaggerates a couple of things. Like Taraji's boss talks to her crazy. Like, I don't understand. She works at a supermarket and her boss is talking to her so crazy that it almost doesn't make sense. Like, why would your boss be that mean to you when you come into work? So anyway, her boss is talking to her, cursing at her, you know, telling her to shut the F up and you're always late and I'm only, you know, whatever. You'll see the movie and see what I'm talking about. But the boss was way over the top. So I thought that I didn't really understand why her boss, being a black man, was talking to her so crazy. It's just a supermarket at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? So she was a cashier. So he was going off on her just about every little thing about how she comes in late or how, you know, anyway. So there were so many weird things in this movie to me that didn't need to be there. I thought the storyline was okay. Now, I'm kind of going in and out of the things I like. I'm going to go back to something I liked before I go back to some of the weird things. What I did like at the end about the movie is that he flipped it at the end and it was basically this woman, her daughter had died the day before, and everything we see in the movie is Taraji essentially, she still thinks her daughter's alive. So you go back and see the movie. I'm not going to explain the whole movie, but what made the movie good to me, at the storyline at the end, they flipped it where Taraji was imagining all the things that were happening that day because she didn't come to grips with the fact that her daughter actually died the day before. So again, you'll see the movie, it'll make sense. So that part I thought was dope because I'm a storyline guy. I like storylines. Now, the parts of the story that was odd to me was, like I said, her boss was really crazy as far as way he talked about her. There was also a character, that a white cop who had, Taraji's driving on the road, and this white cop, I guess she almost cuts the cop off in traffic, and the cop gets mad and follows her. Now, this is an unmarked cop. The cop is in a regular car. The cop is not in uniform, not in a regular police car. The cop is in his own car, it looks like. He catches up to Taraji, kind of rams her car off the road a little bit, and then proceeds to tell her, like, listen, you didn't think I was a cop, did you? And then he's like, I'm going to if I ever get a chance to blow your brains out, I'm going to blow your brains out legally. This is after another cop comes to the scene. It's weird. It's an over the top characterization of the angry white cop, which wasn't believable. Tiana Taylor is one of the main characters as far as the detective who deals with Taraji, because again, if you see the movie, Taraji, she didn't rob a bank, but it seemed like she robbed a bank because, like I said, anyway, go see the movie. But Tiana Taylor's character was interesting. I thought she played a good believable detective. The makeup and all that was like overdone. I mean, usually detectives are not that much makeuped out, but that was a small thing, you know what I'm saying? And then there was another part in the movie with the bank, with the whole bank robbery thing. So there was a section where Sherry Shepherd, her and Taraji start to bond in this whole bank robbery situation, because Taraji is the quote unquote bank robber in the movie. And again, you'll have to see it because she wasn't really robbing the bank. And then Sherry Shepherd is the bank manager. So there was a section where they're talking, and then Taraji says something about the things that she's dealing with, and Sherry Shepherd is talking with her, and then Taraji says something about, black women always have something we're dealing with. It's just, there's a lot of weird cliches in there that I don't think necessarily need to be in there. And Tyler Perry, listen, his audience is, his main core is black women. Let's be honest. That's fine. No problem. We all know that. But I think that, one of the criticisms for him is that he's always kind of demonizing men and demonizing black men, and always kind of catering to this unlimited idea, or this perpetual idea of black women being the victim. And I think that the story actually was good. You didn't really need, it wasn't really about black women, right? It was really more about a mom who struggled and is very poor and had some mental issues because of a tragic thing that happened with her daughter. The story was good enough without the weird cliches. That's what I'm saying. It didn't need the things that Tyler Perry typically throws into a movie to make it what it was. So that was my only thing about it. I think Straw in and of itself was a better movie than people are giving credit to, but I think it's because he tends to throw in things that aren't necessary. You know what I'm saying? And then there was some other stuff. There were some other things you got to see, like when you have there was a crowd who was, chanting and rooting for Taraji to be able to be let out this bank as the FBI surrounds it. And, the black women who they put on camera, who was supposed, the reporters putting the mic up to one of the black women, and the stuff the woman said is just crazy. So there's just some things in there that I don't really understand why Tyler Perry puts some things in movies. Now, my theory is that when I sat back and I looked at all the criticism with this movie, I said, well, maybe he throws these over the top things in there on purpose. Maybe it's to actually get us all to talk about these things. Tyler Perry has certain ideas about black men in his films, and I think I think that he's doing that because he wants to cater to his base. And I think I saw a lot of black women even not happy about the film because they weren't happy about the way Taraji was portrayed. I think Taraji, she carried the movie, is such a good actor, but I think even her character was over the top at certain times, right? You know, so there's a lot in that movie that you can really take from it. My overall take of it was that it was a good film. To me, it's probably the best film that I've seen that Tyler Perry has done, right? To be honest with you, just because the storyline was good, and again, I was really impressed by the way they twisted the storyline at the end. So, you know, but you guys go ahead and check it out. Let me know what you guys think. Again, I'm a fan of good film, and I think that Tyler Perry has a lot of resources. To his credit, he's come a long way and done a lot of things to build his studio and to produce his own content and stuff like that. So you can't take that away from him. And I think some of his stories are getting better. But I think if he can keep doing things like Straw, I mean, it's just a good film. You really don't need the black woman narrative and the crazy white cop, and you know, you don't really need those things to make a good film. I think just make good stories, and at the end of the day, people will go check out a good story. Nothing beats a good written script and a good story. And obviously, if you have a great actor to execute that, then it's going to be good. So y'all go check it out. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to tap back in with you guys later. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, hit the subscribe button. It's Kojo on the Crucial Combo podcast, and I'm going to talk to you in a second. We out of here.